Morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Steve Burness, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau, serving Chicago and Northern Illinois. What a great webinar we have planned for you today to share with you the tools to lead effectively, engage customers virtually. 2020 has been a year of great challenges. One of the biggest challenges people and organizations have to adapt to a virtual work environment. Today, we are most grateful to have our partners at PNC Bank for sponsoring today's webinar. We want to thank them. We are proud that Shane Print has been on our board of directors for over 5 years. I've had a long business relationship with Scott Swanson, the president of PNC Bank Illinois, who's here with us today for over 20 years. We're excited about this partnership, and it continues to deepen with PNC Bank, even in challenging times, that we can provide value-added content with PNC to kick off for today's webinar. To kick it off today, I want to welcome Scott Swanson. Thank you for your leadership over the years, Scott, for the business community in Chicago. Great partner, and take it away, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. It's great to be with everyone here today. He's with you at the Better Business Bureau in person, so we appreciate everyone participating today as we continue to make the best of these virtual environments to stay connected and bring some real value. And Steve, I do want to thank you for your leadership and ongoing commitment to businesses across our region. PNC is proud of our relationship with the Better Business Bureau and its mission to continuously foster a workplace of trust, which is certainly a shared value really among our organizations. And we're pleased to continue with the rollout of these educational sessions as we recognize during these very challenging times. PNC has always had a focus on the needs of small businesses, and earlier this year, we did all we could to maximize the benefits of the PPP program to provide much needed capital to small and mid-sized businesses. And in fact, we ended up lending more than $14 billion in PPP loans to over 70,000 small businesses across our footprint. I think it was a very needed program, but one that we know really helped businesses at a time of great need, which continues today for many. We've also provided over $1 million in local COVID-19 relief to support medical PPE, food subsidies, rental assistance, computers for students, essential child care items, the types of things that so many in our community have come together to provide, which is one of the great things about being in this Chicagoland region. And we do firmly believe that our success is defined by the success that we help create with our employees and customers and the communities we serve. I did want to highlight one of the things that we did do this year is recognize a real opportunity to increase the role that we play and the commitment we made to end systemic racism and support economic empowerment of African Americans and low to moderate income communities. And so we announced $1 billion commitment to those efforts. One of the key pillars of it will actually be areas around entrepreneurship, including enhancing access to capital and technical assistance, particularly for Black-owned businesses. And so we'll be looking forward to our partnership with the Better Business Bureau and identifying opportunities and working with our communities in that effort. And this commitment comes to life in our work with teams to do so. It's really part of the passion of how we approach the way that we engage with our customers, individuals, partners like the Better Business Bureau. So again, thank you for being here today. And so now I'd like to introduce Amber Johnson, our moderator for today's event. Amber is the Chief Communications Officer and Senior Research Associate in the Center for Values-Driven Leadership at Benedictine University. She recently completed her doctoral dissertation with a study on the success factors on leading global change. Amber is a regular contributor at Forbes.com, where she writes about culture, strategic planning, and building positive organizations. As a facilitator and consultant, Amber helps companies connect their purpose and values to their core strategies and behaviors. She has global leadership experience with World Vision and the U.S. Peace Corps, and has served as a consultant to organizations including digital marketing agencies, universities, manufacturing companies, utilities, and nonprofit organizations. Most recently, Amber and her colleague Jim Ledema published an ebook on leading high-performing, high-engagement virtual teams. So thank you, Amber, for leading this important discussion today. And so I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Scott. It's really a delight to be here with you all today. And as we get started, I want to acknowledge up front something that I think everyone on this call has in common, at least I hope we do, which is that very few of us are really doing our jobs just to get the paycheck. We do our work because we like it. We like the people and we love the customers and the clients. And it gives us a really big sense of purpose and direction. And for me, at least, it's how I spend most of my hours, and it's a big part of the way I contribute to the world. So I want you to know as we get started today that that's the perspective we're coming from. And in particular, the Center for Values-Driven Leadership, where I work, is designed for leaders who think like that and who believe in doing business well, with purpose, and of course, profitably. And so that's what today is about too. We're really going to dig into that idea as it relates to customers and to creating engagement in this largely virtual environment in which we're now operating. But I think it's equally important, perhaps even more important, that we think about engagement and care for our team members as well. And so here at the top of this session, I want to give you access to a free resource. Scott mentioned our recently published ebook called Leading High-Performing, High-Engagement Virtual Teams During COVID-19 and Beyond. And we're going to try to share the link for that so you can download a free copy in the boxes. You can also search for Center for Values-Driven Leadership Virtual Teams to find that. And I hope you'll do it and take time to read it and think about the leadership you want to bring to your team as well as to your clients in this difficult season. While you're on your website, take a second to learn about the center as well, and especially about our PhD program in values-driven leadership that's designed for senior executives like us on the call. All right, so now we want to turn our attention to how to create engagement with our customers in this virtual environment, and I get to introduce you to the panelists. So let me say a word about each one, and I'll give them each a minute to kind of help us understand their companies and their experience with an eye on today's topic. First up is Brandon Patrick, the Technology Services Director with Sagan LLC. Brandon's the guy I think most of us wish we had on our team back in March. He and his team helped over 100 companies transition to being virtual. And so they had a huge task to manage. And Brandon, would you just take a minute now to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Amber. You know, typically I like to say I'm doing my job if I'm behind the scenes, but suddenly in March, everyone wanted my attention. So my role at Sagan is two parts. I oversee our IT managed service practice, which provides IT support to small and medium-sized companies all across Chicago. But I also play the role of strategic advisor on my team, helping clients with their long-term strategies. But yes, recently though, I'm a jack of all trades, just trying to help clients adapt their business model to reach customers virtually.
I think we've all learned to be a little more Jack or Jane of all trades recently and developed some new skill sets. You were ahead of the curve though, no doubt. Thanks, Brandon. Brandon's joined today by his colleague, Alice Rukowski, the VP of Executive Development at Sagan. And Alice coaches executives on how to create real presence, especially for virtual events and online engagement. And she regularly coaches CEOs and other experts on how to present their ideas in forums like TED Talks and even the Oprah Show. So Alice, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to be here this morning or this afternoon. Yes, I'm the I'm the Vice President of Executive Development for Sagan. And I'm also a specialist in executive presence, which is really it's got an evolving meaning to it, because before it used to be in person, someone doing a talk or a presentation, but now it's everything because it's virtual. So it's presentations on webinars, on the phone, and virtual. So most of what I do is about delivery. So there's what you say, that's your content, and then there's how you say it, which is your delivery, and that includes your body language, which I'm a specialist in, and also your vocal brand. And I've been doing it for 30 years, and I still love it.
Vocal brand, that's a new term. We'll have to ask you about that in a little bit. All right, next I want to introduce you to Dr. Aaron Butchko. He's an adjunct professor with Loyola's Executive and Professional Education Center. And he has written 2 books in the last 3 years. His focus is on marketplace strategy, and I think that's going to be helpful for our conversation today about customers. Aaron, can you introduce yourself? Oh, Aaron, we can't hear you.
There's the obvious mistake of the day. I'm actually a full-time professor of strategy and management at Bradley University, and then I work through Loyola's Executive Center as an adjunct faculty member there, doing primarily executive work in the area of leadership, strategy, and market strategy type approaches. And looking forward to the conversation today. Should be a lot of fun. We got some great people here.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, Aaron. All right, last but not least, I want to introduce you to Dakota Schultz. He's a co-founder and partner with Agency 360, which is a Chicago-based communications firm. Dakota is really deeply rooted in the Chicago community, and in fact, he led 2 citywide public art efforts as community fundraisers. In my observation, that's the kind of heart he brings to his work with his clients, many of whom are in the hard-hit restaurant industry. So Dakota, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, and echo everybody's welcome message. It's great to be here, and I've been so excited about this. Just even our strategy calls, taking lots of notes from the other experts here, which is fantastic. So I lead a small communications company called Agency 360. As you mentioned, Amber, we work with a lot of restaurants, but also others in retail and services and charities. And I also lead a B2B marketing association. So I've had the opportunity over the last several months in particular to kind of see how everybody has been adjusting, different size businesses, different industries and all that, which has been humbling, but it's been great to be entrenched with them. We're a small business and I'm working with a lot of small businesses. We're in the room when kind of decisions are being made. We understand the passions that everyone is putting into their businesses, and really use that as a way to challenge our staff to say our role is now more important than it's ever been in terms of facilitating really effective communication, and I think this is an example of that. So excited to be here.
Thank you. Well, you can see we have a great lineup. So let me tell you a little how this is going to work. Today we have questions for each of our panelists, and we'll also open it to be more of a conversation as well, so they can chime in with their own perspectives. And we also want to make sure we address your questions. So please submit them via the chat box, and Troy Gould with the BBB will moderate those beginning at about 12:15. So let me jump right in with our first question, which is going to be for you, Brandon. We're talking about good customer experience virtually, and I think so much of that is about getting the right technology. Will you give us just a little coaching on how to find the right tech for our needs and what's working and how we can evaluate it?
Sure. Yeah, and this question has gotten much more complex than it was back before March. This is well, let me just say this a little bit differently. Back in March, prior to the pandemic, whenever you would look for conferencing or collaboration platforms, there really was just maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 features that would delineate, the different tools and things that are out there. And since March, they've all just undergone rapid development to bring in about all sorts of tools and means in which you can reach your customer in different ways, or really mimic a lifelike experience. One of the easy examples is this idea of like breakout sessions. So if you're hosting a conference or want to have sidebar discussions with a setting that you might have done in the past when it's in person, they now have been developing features like that, so you can start on a call similar to this, and let's say 2 of us could break out into those. So the selection of what is right and where to get started really is more of a question of, okay, let's not look at the technology first. I think what you need to do is start with, okay, what are your needs? Who's your customer? How do you want to interact with them? And what kind of ease of use do you want to provide? And kind of taking a step back, one of the things you should do is start with some of the basics with, working at home. It's very important that you have quality audio and visual if you want to be seen and heard well. So, trying to rely on your laptop, for example, the webcam and the audio device, the mic that's on there, they're kind of general purpose. They're not, enterprise grade, let's say. So getting just a separate webcam and a microphone can really help, the visuals, being heard, Ease of access is another feature that really is important. So when you set up these type of meetings, you send a link to a client, but then they have to download things and have to figure out how to join the meeting. I think it's important that you consider what that is and who your customer is and their ability to, take part in this virtual setting with, the tools that you would select. And some of the common ones are like Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, GoToMeeting, WebEx, which we're on today, or GoToWebinar. And, it's really a matter now of, what features do you want to have for interaction versus, how many people are going to attend this meeting, or, features of the past that really don't make a whole lot of sense. And one of the other things I think is really interesting too is the shift in perception. Using Google Meet or Microsoft Teams historically was viewed as internal, so it was informal, versus Zoom would be external and it's formal, or GoToMeeting. Now they've all just blended together. It's kind of like your home workspace. Everything is just all evolved. So it's really interesting to watch. But yeah, that would be my advice. Get those basic components for your computer, but then also just kind of take a look more so at the type of interaction you want to have and use that as a requirement for the tool you select as like a video conferencing platform.
And I don't know about you, but my observation is that the average business person has grown much more savvy at these tools in the last few years.
It has made this whole experience, this is a silver lining for me. It has done my job so well. For the last 3 to 5 years, we've been preaching mobility, work from everywhere, security while doing so, collaboration, all that, and everybody's just jumped into the deep end. So it's been, that part has been good.
Yeah, I even taught my 90-year-old grandma to use Zoom. So we've really done, a decade's worth of adjustment in the last few months.
Yep, absolutely.
Alice, I want to turn to you, Alice, and Brandon got us prepared in terms of technology, but showing up on camera is different than showing up on the phone or face-to-face. So when you're coaching folks, do you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 tips that you give them on how to bring presence to their online meetings?
Yeah, and I like not to call them tips because they're actually they're actually a skill. And you can get better at it. So one thing I want to say is, do you know how long it takes a person to judge whether they like you or not, online or in person? 7 seconds. That is very quick. So as soon as you're on, you're making an impression and people are beginning to formulate a perception of you. So that's just good to know. It's as soon as you're on. And the other thing I want to say before I give a few little skills is we have 2 realities. One reality is us, and the other reality is them. And we need to give a lot more attention to the them, particularly when we're online. Are they seeing me? Can they see me? Is the lighting okay? How am I verbalizing? Am I getting my point across? Those kind of things. So it's about them. So Brandon set it up nicely with, the mic and having a lighting and everything. So I always say set the stage, very important. But here's the most important thing and unbelievably powerful, and that is your posture. I am not kidding. People go, oh, stand up straight. No, I don't mean that. I mean, do you have an inviting posture, and is it a good posture? So I'm going to go over one thing for everybody to try. Your feet on the floor, whether you're standing or sitting or on the ground, is incredibly powerful. I'll tell you why. Because all the research has shown is when your feet are solid, you process more effectively. Who doesn't want that? So when you are really struggling, or it's a high stakes talk or encounter, where are your feet? That would be my first thing. Secondly is, you want your lower body in the chair, but you want your upper body to lift. Why? Because otherwise I look like I'm bored, or I'm tired, or, or I'm like this. You want to be upright. And I'll tell you what's so cool about that. It affects the serotonin in your brain, which helps you with stress. So I have this posture, I'm ready, and I'm reducing my serotonin. Is that amazing? Also, little burst of testosterone, power. You get that from this posture, and it's an upright posture. I would suggest it for all of you to practice it and see how it feels to you. Secondly, your facial expressions. Everybody has them. It's just that we get online sometimes and we get that frozen look, you know, like we have a mask on. And boy, I'm working with people that are on Zoom all day and they are bored with no expression on the face. Look, eyebrows go up when you're happy. If they're not, I don't know what's going on up there, that they're, you know, not moving. The other is a smile, not a fake smile. But it's really okay to have an open expression and invite people in. You know, when you're face-to-face at work, you actually have like this hallway talking, right? You talk in the halls, you walk through, you say, hi, how you doing? We get online, we just go, okay, let's get to it. Now, a nice smile on the face, a little greeting to people actually warms up the conversation. Vocal brand. What do you sound like to people? So here's one hint I have for this for a skill. If your voice is not projecting, or if you're mumbling, or people can't hear you, it's one of two things. You're either not opening your mouth enough to articulate your words. It's a simple thing to say, but it's hard for us to do. When you're on the phone, do you ever hear people go, yeah, call me at 57 blah, 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 and you're like, I can't, what? What'd you say? 570, open the mouth to articulate. Second thing, you need to breathe. Where's the breath? The breath is taken on the pause. So I'm going to just say a sentence, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to speak on the exhale. This is one of the best skills you can learn, is that the air is fuel for the voice. A louder voice, projected voice, not loud, but projected voice, it exhibits confidence to people. You could be the smartest person on the planet. If I can't hear you, I start to judge what you're saying to me. And I start to go, not sure, not trusting it, because it's not projected enough. So they're my 3 things. Set it up, good posture, get that boost from that testosterone, the serotonin levels. Take a breath to speak loud enough so people can hear you, and open your mouth to form your words. How's that?
It's great. And I know that we heard you, because when you talked about opening your mouth, I saw 3 of the 4 panelists go. And so I'm guessing the participants did as well. We're all already trying to put that into practice. Aaron, I want to move to you, and we've just heard Alice and Brandon, and they've reminded us how much has really changed since March. And you're studying and working with companies who are really right in the middle of it. And how are you helping them think about these changes and about what has shifted and what has stayed the same? Can you help us get grounded in those ideas?
Yeah, I hope so. First of all, let me tell you, I'm going to be a little bit of the contrarian here, only from this perspective. The more things change, the more they remain the same. And what I mean by that is, certainly COVID has had an impact on us, but on the other hand, in many ways, not much has really changed. And let me explain that for just a second. I always tell people there's a difference between the marketplace and the market space. And when we talk about the marketplace, we tend to think in terms of physical area. We've got to have a physical proximity to the customer. But the market space is right up here. It's happening between your ears in the brain. And so the real question is, how do we connect in that space with the customer to be able to convey to them that, hey, you can trust me. And we said that early in this discussion too, by the way. You can trust me. I've got good products. I've got good services for you. How do we do that? You know, I tell people, in a sense, I said, I started out in my career in 1978 working remotely, and they always kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, I sold rock and roll records for American Broadcasting Corporation. We had to call in twice a day to the office. We had a phone credit card to do that. You know, everything we did was in a sense remote, because we were the sales reps out in the field, and the office was located literally out in California, thousands of miles away. So we've been doing this in a sense. It's not new in that regard. What is new is the way and the extent to which technology has become a great enabler of this. There's a difference between, and Alice was already getting at this, there's a difference between that disembodied voice over the phone and being able to see people. Now, the good news is we can actually see people. As a matter of fact, when I teach classes right now, we've got to be masked up if we're in the classroom. Now I can actually be face to face, which is fantastic because I can read what's going on people's faces. But at the same time, it's challenged us because it's not a skill set that we're familiar with. So that's why I think some of the points that she's raised are really critical here. You know, we've come a long ways if we really give ourselves credit for that in terms of how we've responded to this. We have changed remarkably well. And I think the challenge for us really is to start thinking about how to use the tools that we now have to engage the customers up here in the market space to be able to continue to get that emotional connection. And that's what we're really shooting for here, is that emotional connection across.
Yeah, I think that emotional connection is so important. We're going to dig into that a little further. And I think this is a time of heightened emotions for many people as well. I think that that's worth acknowledging. And I think that's a really natural transition to you, Dakota, because, you know.
Why the emotional one? What do you think?
No, not trying to imply that. But, you know, you're working with restaurants, and we said this is a particularly hard hit industry. It's also an industry that the customer experience can't fully be delivered in the same way through carry out, even or takeaway service. And so I'm curious, you know, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing in terms of that, in terms of the experience of your clients and what they're going through?
Yeah, and I'll try to pull in some of what everybody said too, because I think Aaron's right that, you know, some things don't change. And what you had said at the top, Amber, about, you know, looking at all this through the lens of purpose, I think is particularly important. You know, we're all familiar with what the restaurant industry is going through. I think that's been kind of a driving part of the news cycle as far as COVID is concerned and all that. And certainly a lot of them had to make the switch to delivery and curbside service and all that. And some did it a lot faster than others, and I think, you know, got a little bit ahead of the competition in that way, which is good for their business. But it's not a differentiator anymore, right? Everybody has to do it, so it's not. You know, it becomes more a matter of how they're doing it, and it can be small things that kind of bring out that emotion, like we were talking about. Is it a handwritten note that goes, you know, with the food that's being delivered in some kind of way? How are you empowering your staff, for example, who are in the restaurant, perhaps without people, to use social media, you know, on behalf of the restaurant in a very personalized way? And, you know, we advocate a lot for that in terms of like show the work that you're doing and the fun that you're having too, and the personality and everything that goes into your community-based business, rather than just here is our food, here's our product. And I think that that's a natural fit for a lot of restaurants, but it expands beyond that, right, into other industries too. I mean, if you think about the hospitality industry, the answer is kind of baked into the category, right? It's about being hospitable. It's about serving, you know, the community. And we've probably all seen that in meal trains or in deliveries to hospital staff, you know, things like that. All of that, I think, really starts at the top of the organization. And if you have owners and leaders and CEOs that have that kind of moral presence and are demonstrating it, it trickles down to everybody, which is really, really important. But, you know, we talk a lot about nobody goes out to eat, right? You're going out for a different kind of experience. And, you know, we work with a barbecue restaurant, and the barbecue is a comfort food, right? Everybody kind of knows that. That's what they're selling. They're selling comfort. They're not selling brisket. And if they can kind of lean into that and make that a part of their message, they're going to connect in a more emotional way over the long haul. We've probably all, everybody, this is a silly statement, we've all ordered pizza, right? If you have kids in the house, even if you don't, you get excited when that doorbell rings and here's the pizza. Do you get that excited when the timer goes off on the oven for your frozen pizza? You don't. And there's something to that. And if, you know, I think this goes directly to purpose. And it exists, and like I said, beyond just the restaurant space. You know, food is obviously very cultural, but culture is about engagement. And there's been lots of talk, as everyone's heard, in terms of, you know, essential workers and essential business. But I struggle with that phrase a little bit, because when you get right down to it, everybody should be essential in kind of a certain way, and not Not essential in like what is necessary. I need to eat, right? I need to put my money somewhere rather than under my mattress. I need a licensed lawyer. But what's essential in those needs is the comfort that I get from those businesses, from those people, in making my life more enjoyable. And that's, that should be something that is always at the forefront, whether we're in a pandemic or not. So it comes back to exactly what Aaron was saying. Like, we've just exposed some things that maybe we forgot that are really, really important right now.
Yeah, it does have a way of helping us peel back the layers and get to what's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to just underline what you said, that these ideas are not just relevant to the restaurant business. Anytime we can make an emotional connection, can provide something for our clients that speaks to the real purpose and interest in our business, not just the food that they're receiving or the service they're receiving, it strengthens those relationships. And there are unique opportunities. I have a grocery store I go to that's doing a great job really caring for seniors with a safe shopping hour in the morning. And that makes me like the store better. And I'm sure we can all think of those experiences. So there are unique opportunities in this season. I want to concentrate, I think, for the next round of questions on those unique opportunities that you all have alluded to, and focus on what is working. We hear a lot in the news about what's not working, but let's spend some time on what is working and some ideas that are having an impact and creating engagement that we want with our customers. And we'll come back to you first, Brandon. I think the first step to a good digital experience is just not to give customers a bad one. And in particular, cybersecurity has increased in importance over the last few months. So this could be, a year-long course, but what can you tell us in 2 minutes that the audience can benefit from in terms of cybersecurity?
Yeah, I know. This is I give entire panels on just this alone. One of the things I think, making the assumption that most are here because they've, been on a virtual conference or familiar with them, the processes that you go through. If you create a meeting, you go through a series of steps with whatever platform you're using to, select the time, the date, what's it called. But it's really important. Every single one of them has privacy settings, and they usually look like, allow users to bypass the lobby. Checkbox, yes or no. And most see that as a big inconvenience, especially for customers, because if it's a low-tech customer, that means that they click to join the meeting, but then it doesn't launch for them right away. They have to wait for the organizer to allow them to be let in. But it's protections like that that actually are, cybersecurity in nature, because that keeps unwanted people from joining your meeting. With the, advanced use of all sorts of virtual platforms, that's where a lot of hackers and such have, really kind of directed their attention. One of the, it's kind of funny now, but one of the ones that was happening in March and April was Zoom bombing. So Zoom was generally, used by sales teams, but it was more of a person-to-person kind of platform. It wasn't necessarily used for work, but it grew really quickly in use. And whenever you create a meeting in Zoom, it just generates a link that's very generic, Zoom meetings with an identification code at the end that was only like, this number's not correct, I'm making it up, but 7 or 8 characters. So people quickly learned that if that privacy button wasn't checked to allow people to come in the meeting, to be announced before allowed in, they could just type out the meeting link and their web address and then just hit go, and they'll be able to just join the meeting. So in something like this, you would just suddenly see a person appear. And a couple platforms, Zoom was one of them too, where the connection itself, the content wasn't encrypted. So that was something that they all quickly corrected. So almost all platforms now operate in some sort of encrypted platform, so it's safe, it's secure. But it's really important to know whenever you're setting up meetings, whether it's something like this, which is intended to be public. So, here's a link, anybody with a link can click it. But you also need to understand what that means. That means anybody with a link can click it and join the meeting. So you want to make sure that the moderator or the organizer also does enable some maybe additional features to ensure that those are the right people trying to join the meeting. And again, they all do it a little bit differently, but there usually are about 3 to 4 different options, pretty standard across all platforms, to say how you want to manage who can attend the meetings, whether they're public, private, whether visitors get announced or not, do they have to be let in? And even though it might be a bit of a pain for most, I know, whenever you're joining meetings and trying to control that. But it's incredibly important for cybersecurity to ensure that the conversation that you're having is intended to be either public or private and is doing so in the right manner.
Absolutely. And I would imagine a second round of concern, and maybe you can respond to this just briefly, is all of these laptops at home connected to our home networks. Does that make us more vulnerable, and how should we think about that?
Yeah, and what's really interesting is it's myself included, right? You're at home, your laptop's there, you can access it at any time. It's like, you know, being on your phone and being connected all the time without a whole lot of social activities to do. A lot of people are working a lot more hours than they had before, and without the process that people go through to go to work, you commute, you turn your laptop on when you get to work, you turn it off, and then you commute home. There's actually a really simple step there that's now getting missed, and that's the restarting of your computer. That's when a lot of updates provided by operating systems like Microsoft get applied and keeps your laptop at home secure. So right now, that's kind of the number one thing that we're seeing and recommending for everyone is, you know, when you're at home, please make sure to just still, you know, if you don't turn it on and off, at least just restart it so that those updates get applied, because that affects everything that, you know, runs on your computer, including conferencing software.
That may be the simplest piece of advice you could ever possibly give, and
yeah, I mean, it's really pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's very simple. Yeah. Just restart your computer.
Can we do a restart on all of 2020? Is there a way to just like turn it off, turn it back on?
Seriously.
Exactly.
Right over.
All right, Aaron, you spoke earlier about getting into this broader market space, and you spoke about it generally. I'm wondering what it looks like more specifically. Can you give examples of how you're seeing brands do this, or how you would recommend people to start thinking about that?
Sure. And I'm going to leverage off something that Dakota said when he said, you know, we don't go to a restaurant we don't need to go to a restaurant to eat. Here's a thought for those of you that are joining us. It's an old thought, not original, but I still find it extremely powerful. Oftentimes, what we think we're selling is not what the customer thinks they're buying. I'll say that one more time. What we think we're selling is not what the customer thinks they are buying. Think about it logically for just a moment. You want a book, you don't need to go to Amazon. You want a computer, you don't need to buy one from Apple. You don't need to go to an Apple store. You know, you want to buy clothes, you don't need to go to Nordstrom's. Right? So why do we do that, right? What is it about us that causes us to behave in that way? And what I would suggest to you is what we're really buying is an experience. That's the emotional connection for most people, is we buy experiences. And I had a vice president a number of years ago kind of wake me up to this when he said something I found very, very powerful. He said, your brand is a promise of an experience. I'm going to say that for you one more time. Your brand is a promise of an experience. And by the way, customer loyalty is a promise kept. So what is the experience that the customer expects from you? And are you delivering that consistently? Keep in mind that, by the way, today, as we're talking here about technology, that customer experience begins the first time they click on your website. That's the first initial reaction that they have. So how are you greeting them in the virtual space when there's no physical receptionist there, perhaps, to be able to handle that? And then once you've identified the experience, how are you using technology as an enabler of that? And if you want a tremendous example, I tell people, look no further than Disney. Disney sets you up when you're booking the vacation. They start emailing you regularly as you're getting ready to go on your vacation to hype your excitement and get you more geeked to go. And then when you get to the freaking parks, they got an app on your phone that's telling you how long you're going to be waiting in line to get to the next attraction. I mean, it's just, it's immersive, right? They're immersing you in this fantasy world, and that's what they're trying to do, is create that experience. So I think the real challenge is to ask ourselves, what is the customer really hiring us to do? And usually it's not the product or the service, right? They're hiring us to solve some kind of a problem that they have and to give them an experience that will address that. And then when you clarify that in your mind, how then does your business model align with that? That's the real challenge, I think.
I like that. I'm reminded of a business story I once heard of an auto repair shop that was just killing it. They were beating their competition, but they did wonderful things like cleaning your car before they returned it to you. And so the repair was exactly the same any repair shop you went to in the city, but the service, the experience you got differentiated this. And I think looking for those differentiators and which of those can be delivered virtually as well is a way to win right now.
Absolutely. Great suggestion.
Yeah, and Dakota, I want to ask you for an example, and maybe you have some advice you've been giving your clients, and you can illustrate it with a story, or could you just kind of help us put that idea into practice?
Sure. I mean, it might not even be just business advice from my point of view, but it's take chances. And I think right now that there's actually a little bit more opportunity to do that in the marketplace, in the market space too. Market space of ideas, right? Like there can be a little bit more forgiveness if your intentions are good. So kind of related to that is trusting your intentions and knowing, that you can figure it out as you go. You don't need to have this really kind of perfect roadmap for here's what we're gonna do. So I guess by way as an example, we work with Aurelio's Pizza. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Aurelio's. They've got tons of locations all around the Chicago area. And a couple of years ago, we had put together this kind of in-person celebration on one of these fake holidays, right? It was National Pizza Party Day, which doesn't mean anything, except now it kind of means everything in a weird way, right? So what we had done in the past was work with some other pizza companies as well, some of the big ones, and threw kind of like a little pop-up party in downtown Chicago, and we gave out free pizza, and we used that as a way to raise some money for charity. And it was this kind of surprise and delight type of campaign. So we had all of that planned for this year, and then the pandemic hit and everything was shut down, and it was like, oh, well, we better scrap this idea. And we pushed back on that to say, well, let's just change what it is. And the purpose of it in terms of a National Pizza Party Day now is about promoting gathering together. And this is, again, what everybody kind of knows about pizza. You use it a lot for your special occasions, after a little league game, or when certain friends and family come to town. It's gathering around, kind of based on the pizza, right? So we set it up and said, we'll do it virtually. We'll figure it out. We'll throw a virtual pizza party, which we had never done, Aurelio's had never done, and we wanted it to be as inclusive as possible. So when we started inviting guests to it, we allowed them to invite other guests. So it kind of elevated, and before we knew it, we had this kind of star-studded virtual pizza party with Brian Urlacher and Ozzie Guillen and Jeremy Roenick. And you Amber joked about teaching your grandmother to use Zoom. I got to teach Jeremy Roenick how to use Zoom. So take a surly hockey player with a lot of attitude and get him to host an hour-long show on a platform for people. We figured it out as we were going, and it became just a lot of fun. And we knew that those elements that were going to make it successful was, this isn't a commercial for Aurelio's. So when we asked these guests to participate and tell their stories, it wasn't, hey, we want you to tell everyone how great our sauce is. It was, tell us about the pizza places you went to when you were a kid, right? And the other things like that. And then it became very cultural in that way. And it was really important to Joe Aurelio in particular, and this goes back to this kind of leadership position, that it still benefited charity in some way. So he had been delivering pizzas himself to Advocate Hospital. So, we worked with the hospital to get them included in this, and testimonials from frontline healthcare workers, which were just powerful. So it kind of became this like online telethon / pizza party. But at the end of the day, we raised a lot of money for charity. I think it was over $20,000 or something like that. But it was kind of on a whim, like, well, what if we could figure this out? And we just kept pushing. So that's my advice. Like, take your ideas, use the best resources that you have and figure it out, right? Take those chances.
I love it. And that's the sort of event that never would have happened if you hadn't been pushed into it. That's it.
No, not at all. And it could become an annual thing regardless of what the circumstances are. Next National Pizza Party Day. Mark your calendars, everybody. You don't want to miss this holiday.
Yeah, it's a holiday I'm totally willing to celebrate too.
Right.
We're going to, in just a minute, start taking questions from the audience. So Troy, begin to get those ready. But let me ask the panel one more question for all of you, and whoever wants to chime in can. Dakota gave a really great example of kind of an uplifting experience, but a lot of people are experiencing fatigue. We're tired of the technology. We're tired of being on camera. We don't know what to do. There have been some real losses. How are you helping clients and yourself move through these moments of fatigue we all experience?
I can speak to that because I'm working a lot with people who are online all the time, all day, and by afternoon they're actually quite fatigued, and it actually is affecting how they're communicating with people. Coming across in the afternoon as grumpy or a bully or not talking because they're too tired. So I have some great exercises I do that are kind of to relieve the anxiety that have to do with breathing. But there's a lot of good apps out there right now, and I'm suggesting those to people that they get on and actually take 15 seconds or 20 seconds during the day and actually just stop, get off the screen, turn your head, close your eyes, take a breath, and then come back again, because they're just persistent. Their persistence online, they won't get off. They're actually on they're working more hours than they normally work because there's no boundaries around when work is over. So they're working into the night and they're actually quite fatigued. I think the other thing is some of the skills I talked about earlier. When you're breathing and you're communicating with people, you're actually helping your own system than being sort of frozen and locked in and just sort of, talking at people. It actually helps if you're talking with the person. And I think it's less fatiguing than, I'm just reporting, because I do work with people that actually sound like they're reporting. They don't sound like they're conversing. That's hard to do all day. So lift up your head, connect with the person. Also, I wanted to mention this because if I could, because Aaron said something about this, people trusting and believing in you and believing in what you say. And how do they trust you? They trust you with how you're communicating with them. And it's pretty quick online on Zoom because they're seeing you. This is it. And somehow I have to get them to trust me, which is, that's an emotional thing. So if you are just reporting, I think it's very fatiguing just to report. I think if you're just reporting, you could send it to people and not do it online. Yeah. There's two.
You said something earlier that really struck with me too, in terms of thinking about them, right, and how you're being seen. And I completely get that. I mean, we try to advocate that to be a better communicator really starts with being a better listener, and that's an active practice, right? So exactly with what you're saying in terms of, could this be a report versus how am I kind of receiving this information, reacting to it and all that, and it can be energizing if you're doing it well, right?
If it does energize you, and the connection energizes you. But if I'm reporting, I'm not even looking at it. I'm just sort of reading my notes. I mean, I've worked with people that look like this, and you're there and I'm here. And I'm reading. This is very fatiguing for everybody. So I think the connection is one of the most important things. Thanks for picking it up, Dakota. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna echo that completely, though. We were challenged, and this was a real sort of aha moment for me when we had to suddenly go online with education and go from classroom to all of a sudden everything was in the online space back in March. And obviously everybody was complaining about, well, you can't keep students engaged on video. And then I was watching this program and the person said, you ever watch a young person today play a video game? Man, they're engaged for an hour. They'll sit there for an hour and a half, just sucked into that game. What's going on here, And if they're not engaged, it's not them, it's you. You're not making the effort to reach out to them because clearly they're capable of doing this. And that was a major game changer for me, because I said, we really do have to think about how we are emotionally connecting with the person at the other end of that screen. And it's possible to do it in a virtual space. We just haven't thought about it hard enough.
I'm with you.
Great. I want to make sure we get to questions from the audience. So Troy, tell us what we're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Super. Okay, so I want to start off with this question, which I think lends itself to what a lot of our panelists have been discussing in terms of presentation and making a good impression. What if you have a executive or leader in your organization who is not good on camera? They can't present well. How do you help them be engaging or make sure that they deliver that positive impression or experience to your audience?
Well, first you have to get them to get that they're not coming across very well. So that's the first thing. They're probably not, they're not aware of it. So are you asking, was the question technique, or how do you, I didn't quite get the.
It might even be more of like a diplomacy question, right? Like, how do you gently break to somebody that this is something that they need to improve when they're already in a leadership position? You don't want to bruise egos, but you need to improve that platform to engage with your customers or your clients.
I've already had friends of that person tell them. I've had, you know, more senior level people who have been coached. They'll say to me, he needs to be coached. And I'll say, well, you can talk about your experience and how it helped you. The interesting thing is, when I have worked with CEOs and the door closes, they will say, I need help, but they won't say it publicly. They'll say it when the door is closed. So, you know, it has a negative effect on the whole culture when you're asking everybody else to communicate in a certain way, and then the person at the top is not doing that. That creates tension for sure. So anybody that you can get to suggest it to them, somebody they trust, I'd get them in a coaching session for sure. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm going to echo Alice's coaching session. You can't do it. They've got to have professional help. The question is, how do you get them to ask for professional help? And one of the things I have always found useful is lead with a question. And what I mean by that is go to them and say, hey, what are you trying to do with your online meetings? What's your goal? What's your terminal point in some of these sessions? And get them to start talking about it. That opens their mind up, and then you can come back at them and you can say, well, you know, we're getting some feedback that says you may not be achieving that goal. Maybe you ought to talk to somebody who could really help address that. Get them to work through it instead of trying to you can't feed the python. You got to let them swallow it on their own.
That's good.
Great analogy. All right, we have more questions coming in now as we've kicked off the Q&A here. So I'm going to pivot to this question from Gabriel, who is asking about, you know, with Zoom in particular, but I think other platforms support this as well. They have virtual backgrounds, and he said he likes using having the logo up on his virtual background, and he's just trying to canvass the opinion of whether virtual backgrounds are a good idea. Are they off-putting? He likes using the logo, but he doesn't know if that comes on too strong. What are the panelists' opinions on that?
I think it kind of depends. Go ahead, Brandon. I'd love to hear.
I was going to say, yeah, the typical IT answer. It depends. It kind of depends the setting. You know, from what I'm seeing, I think that, you know, we'll use this as an example. This is more of a formal setting, so we all have authentic backgrounds. In the informal setting, you know, where you might be sitting there in your sweats, blurring the background might make total sense. Fine, you know, using an alternative background because it just, you know, it's fine. Nobody really cares. But I have seen in the sort of public eye, like a lot of the television shows and things like that, where they have a little bit more refined background that is false. And those do look really good. You know, it kind of depends on the quality. And to take that back to selecting the right tool, you know, the various tools do offer more and more robust backgrounds that you can use. So that if that's, you know, a key need for you, then that should be one of the driving factors for your decision to pick a platform.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with that completely. We have another question here talking about sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier with like being diplomatic. What is the best way to approach a video conversation or dialogue with a customer or client who's already upset or is difficult to work with?
That they're upset about the video dynamic, or upset about something else and you need to address it through video, I guess.
It's not specified in the question, but I believe that they're upset about something else and you're just trying to address it over video conferencing. I'm going to use kind of a different answer. I haven't thought about this in terms of the video element, but particularly with people that I work with who are younger, right? You know, I don't mean this in a stereotypical way. I think it's just kind of an acute generalization that if you've grown up in a digital environment or even a text-based environment, you're very comfortable kind of communicating in that way. And I'm a big advocate that if there's a problem, pick up the phone, talk. You know, you need to hear a voice. And I suppose there's probably elements of that play into video as well. But, you know, Alice probably has some good science on this, I would think, in terms of even the biochemical reaction of dealing with somebody when you hear the human elements of somebody's voice and you see them is going to make you receptive in a way that can't be communicated in an email or a text and all that. So I think that if you are able to use the medium of video in a way that kind of, you know, very naturally portrays yourself and establishes that connection, go for it. But, you know, don't forget that you can do a lot of that by someone hearing the sound of your voice.
I was going to say, the nature of our work that I am in, I'm usually dealing with problems, which are always, if something's broke, I got to fix it. So I deal with that a lot, and I really like video conferencing for that exact purpose that you just kind of walked us through, is when somebody picks up the phone, they hear the voice, or when you email them, they have a minute to respond however they want. In person, you know, you get a different person sometimes. They're more relaxed. What they said in the email isn't as harsh, you know, so usually that's the way to kind of get them to really kind of calm down so you can, you know, work through whatever issue you're having. And I think that's what I've really liked about the adoption of video conferencing through all this pandemic is everybody uses it now. So it's not like this, you know, technical problem I got to solve every time. But when you see somebody, it also adds to that emotional side. So you kind of bring down the guard that people sometimes will throw up on the phone or through email to lash out. But in person, you know, they're always nicer, like those kind of things. I see video conferencing bridging that gap a little bit as well, too.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. I think, Dakota, you talked about listening, and I wouldn't treat a person that has a dilemma like that it wouldn't be any different than when I would be in person with them. I'm not physically there, but listening would be the first thing. And I mean, kind of listening that's not listening to react or respond, but listening to hear. And then mirroring it back to them so they actually get that you are with them and that you are listening to them and paying attention to them, and then go about whatever the solutions might be. But I think listening is probably the key when there's an issue. And face to face, I would probably say, so tell me what's going on, you know, and then really, really listen. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'll give you the challenge I throw out to executives who face that problem a lot, whether it's face-to-face, virtually, via the phone. What I try to get them to understand is just one very simple idea. You need to need to have in your mind that you're going to make a greater attempt to understand them than you expect them to make to understand you. If you can go into the conversation with that mindset, that, okay, now I'm going to work 3 times as hard to understand you and where you're coming from as I expect you to understand my position, you're generally going to find that you will make that connection. You can begin to work through a lot of these issues. Doesn't matter what the medium is. You got to have that mindset.
Fantastic. Awesome. We've got 1 or 2 more questions that I'd like us to get through. And I'll just say for anybody who has questions that feel have not been addressed, we have the contact information for all of our panelists in the chat. I think that will also come up again before we conclude in the slideshow. So take that down if there's something that was really burning that didn't get addressed. But just to conclude here, sort of want to end on a more positive note and ask our panelists, which virtual practices or innovations that you've experienced over the past several months do you think are the kind of improvements or practices that we'll embrace and stay with us after the pandemic.
We don't have to be physically present nearly as much as we thought. Boy, if there's one thing we've learned, companies used to use, work one day from home. That was sort of a sweetener for them because, boy, we had that old manager's mindset. I got to have them in the office. I got to see what they're doing. They could be goofing off for all I know. Hey, guess what we've learned? We can actually get a lot of work done at home. It's pretty amazing, And I think if we can leverage that going forward, oh my gosh, the opportunities are phenomenal. I'm going to caution against that with the one other thing that's been said, though. You got to learn when to turn the computer off.
Yep. Yeah, I used to be a traveling consultant, so I've been saying this for the last 7 months or so, is that it's going to create a new type of environment for those industries or any big companies where you have to travel to be in person, and it's just the perception that the in-person meeting is better for whatever reason. Yeah, video conferencing has been around for a long time, but it's just been slow to adoption, and everybody's been kind of thrust into this. So yeah, I hope it allows people to get a lot of their personal time back. For me, I was on the road, typical Monday through Friday traveling. And gosh, there were so many weeks where I could have been at home. I didn't need to be there, and the personal time I think that people would get back from now having these tools is just remarkable. I'm kind of jealous in a way.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brandon. And I had a meeting, a coaching session last 2 weeks ago. What was beautiful was there's somebody from the UK, somebody from Scotland, somebody from France, and somebody from Singapore, and we're all together. I mean, this is what the beautiful thing is, that we can actually reach out to people that we never would be able to unless we traveled. And, I like just traveling up to my office now.
We work a lot in the creative services spaces, and there's a whole kind of suite of technologies that's available in terms of more kind of do-it-yourself style creation. And I've always been a big believer that you can be more creative when you actually put constraints on what your creativity can be, right? In systems of writing, by saying, hey, I'm think about a poem or a haiku, right? You're bound by limits of that structure, and so you have to be creative in a different kind of way. And I think that applies to a lot of different things. So whether that's new restrictions because of budget cuts or new restrictions because of physical proximity and access to creative talent, there's ways in which businesses can kind of embrace those restrictions to actually be more creative with some of the technologies that are out there now. So I hope that sticks around, because I think that it actually reveals a different kind of authenticity to a brand that isn't this real shiny, overproduced polish, but can carry that much more emotional weight.
Awesome. Yeah, I think great answers from our panelists. At this point, we can probably kick it back to Amber and sort of begin our wrap up here. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. It's been a delightful conversation. I hope that we've provided some ideas that help you deepen your emotional connection with your customers in this season where so much is virtual. And Steve, I think it's over to you. Oh, you're on mute, Steve.
You're still muted, Steve. Hang on a second. Let's see if we can send you an invite.
Sorry about that. How's that?
There we go.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Again, I'm Steve Burness, the President and CEO of the BBB. I want to thank everyone for joining us on behalf of the Better Business Bureau and of course, PNC Bank and Scott Swanson, who joined us earlier today. I learned so much today from the panels today as well, and I think we're all thrown into that digital arena in March. And we continue to learn and grow. And I think we learned a lot today, and I learned a lot today. But Alice, I thought I had more than 7 seconds to impress people, so I'll try better next time. Thank you for that wise choices, decisions, and some great information we received today. Very important to all of us. A big thank you to all of our panelists, Brandon, Alice, Aaron, Dakota, and of course, Amber, for your expertise in leading this great program today. Again, thank you to PNC for sponsoring this event today and our entire Wednesday series of webinars. To learn more about these programs and services by PNC Bank, please look about their diversity and supplier programs. Please visit pnc.com. Also, for anyone wanting additional information about our benefits today, and the services of BBB, please reach out to me or visit bbb.org. On the screen, you'll see contact information for all of our panelists. If you'd like to reach out to them for future information, please do so, and you can contact the BBB as well. On behalf of the BBB, we're most grateful for everyone joining us today, and we'll soon be posting today's webinar on bbbwebinars.org, which we have all of our webinars we've done this year so far in the educational arena. I want to wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday season and a great end of this year, and hopefully 2021 will be here sooner than later. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you, everyone. You can log off now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.